prayer. So join me in prayer. Lord Jesus, we thank you for your blessing in our life. We thank you for grace. We thank you for mercy. We thank you for forgiveness. We thank you for all the blessings that we have and your redeeming love for us. We thank you for this great nation that we've been born into. We thank you for freedoms. We thank you for a land of liberty. And we pray for your mercy on the United States of America. We pray, Lord, you would forgive us for our sin and heal our land. We pray that you would help us to have courage, to stand up and be counted, to show up in the showdown, to let our light shine, let our voices be heard. We pray for grace and wisdom that we might represent you well. And we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, I'd like to introduce to you Terry Raposa. In a short time that I've known him, he's become a real friend to me. Terry and his wife Sally are real stalwart cheerleaders for the state of Jefferson. They've come down here to be with us, and I'd like you to welcome to the stage Terry Raposa.
Thanks, Dave. Hey, the first thing I'd like to do here is I'd like to have all the veterans please stand up. All of you. Let's give these guys a hand. We couldn't do this without a rally. Now, if you guys would remain standing and the rest of you would rise, I say we pledge, okay? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now, folks, we're going to have what we call a moment of friendliness. Say hi to one another. You may have a smartphone, or maybe you got a dumb phone like me. Whatever you've got, please turn it off.
Where's your tea party?
Also, I want to bring up the fact that we will have a question and answer period. So when we have that, we'll be lining up people along the front here. You can come up and ask your questions. But until then, we just ask you to hold on to that. Now, before I bring up the three people on the panel, I want to say just a couple of quick things. On September the 3rd, 2013, I got a phone call, Mark Baird. He said, Terry, you know what? If we don't get Siskiyou County tomorrow morning, we're dead in the water. September the 4th, 2013, Siskiyou County voted 4-1 to separate from the state of California. Days later, Modoc County voted 4-0 to separate from the state of California. A month and a half later, Tehama County voted to put the initiative on the ballot. That was number 3. The last time that happened, Tehama County went by 72% for the separation of the state of California. Now, a couple weeks ago, we did a town hall in Chico, California. We had around 500 people. The next morning, we got up on January 11th. We went to Orland. I expected maybe 50, 60 people. That'd be a good turnout in Glenn County. 300. We left there, and when we were there, 4 of their supervisors were there. The only reason all 5 weren't was because one of them was recovering from back surgery. So we headed down the road to Willows, California. We went there, and guess what? We had 300 more people. And the next week, the Board of Supervisors of Glenn County voted 5-0 to separate from the state of California. There's a couple of quick things I do want to say, but before I do that, I'd like to bring up Kayla Brown, Robert Smith, and Mark Baird. Would you guys come up, please? As they're making their way up, I want to go back to October the 22nd, 2013. I was on my way to Orland, Dubuque County, to do a workshop. Before I went there, I made a phone call to Jim Nielsen, who is a friend and our senator in our area. Jim's a good man and tries to do the best he can, but sometimes there's a little gun there. So I called him up and I said, you know, in 2011, Jim, you came to Redding, California, and you did a town hall in front of about 300 people, and you brought Brian Jones with you from San Diego. And at that time, you were absolutely astonished at the debt of California. Because at that time, you were concerned about the fact that California had a $90 billion debt. It could be as much as $110 billion. I go, here we are 2.5 years later. What do you think the debt is now, Jim? He said, well, I don't know. I said, well, what do you think? Take a guess. He goes, I don't know. It could be 150, 200 billion. I said, no. As of this morning at 10:33 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, October the 22nd, 2013, the debt in California is $418,793,982,147. I got silence on the other end of the phone. I said, did you know it's that much? He said, no. I said, well, that's what it is. I said, on top of that, one of the things that we've been dealing with as we go on here is the fact that every place I go, and every place any one of us speak, we have people there that are board of supervisors, people there that are from the Republican Central Committee, from the Democratic Central Committee, people who are from City Council, and just regular folk like us. I asked the same question, I'll ask you guys this question tonight, and that is, out of the 800 laws that they passed last year, that's about 10 a day when they're in session. Out of those laws, how many do not make the average law-abiding citizen of the state of California a criminal? Yeah, I got silence from him too. And I said, you know, I said, that's the problem. There's no representation. Now, if you've got something a little better than what we're trying to do here with this separation, let me know. No answer. Now, that'll be explained as we go on here with something called Reynolds versus Sims. So you guys are not only going to be asked to do some action things tonight, but you'll get a clear and precise understanding of why we are where we are and how we came to be. I'm going to ask you 3 simple questions in this room, because I'm going to show that it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on, we're all together. Number 1, how many people here believe that the government should spend our money in a fiscally responsible manner? Raise your hands. Okay? How many people here believe that we should have a limited government and that our government should not be in every facet of our lives but be limited?
Yes.
And how many people believe here that the Constitution is the law of the land and we should have our constitutional rights respected and preserved? How many people here from Yuba County? Raise your hand. Let's see, we have anybody here from Sutter County? Whoa! We have anybody here from Shasta County? Okay, anybody from Siskiyou County? How about Butte County? Oh, it's a noisy group. Am I forgetting anybody?
How about
Tehama County? You see, here's the thing. This movement is done because it needs to be done. Number 1, understand September the 4th, 2013 was the day this movement started. And these folks are going to explain to you the difference between before and now. What we're doing has never been done before, and we are 5 months old. We should still be in diapers. And we've got 4 counties that are moving, and more to join. A possible 18. So, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Kayla Brown.
Just talk? Oh, hi. I'm short, so I'm going to get rid of this. All right. You're going to get hit with a lot of information tonight, so I think that I'm going to tell you more stories than anything else. All right, you guys ready?
Yeah.
All right. In 1849, the state of California wanted to become a state, but they had a problem. Southern California did not want to be part of what we call today as Central and Northern California because Northern California was a bunch of miners, and they were on federal land, and because Southern California owned their own land, they would have been taxed out of existence. So they went to Congress and they said, please, 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 let us be a territory. We don't want to be part of the state of California. Congress said, you're going to be one state, despite the fact that we know the state of California is too large to be governable. Right. So we're going to fast forward to 1854. This is 4 years after the California became a state. In 1854, the California State Assembly wrote a bill to separate California into 3 states because they said that California was ungovernable. What we propose today as the state of Jefferson, they proposed as the state of Shasta. Okay? It passed the Assembly. It didn't pass the Senate. It was dead on the floor. In 1859, Southern California once again tried to withdraw from the state of California. And in 1859, they won the Assembly, they won the Senate, the governor even signed it, they went back to Congress in D.C., and you know what happened? The Civil War. They didn't get their withdrawal from the state of California. About every 20 years after that, the state of California tried to divide itself. Every 20 years. That's every generation in California has looked at California and gone, something's wrong. Yeah. All right, fast forward to 1941. A lot of us here know what happened in 1941. We wanted money and we needed roads, and we weren't getting it. So in 1941, we said, hey, California, we're out. And we almost got it, but what happened? World War II. And we said, you know what, we're going to put our wants on hold because the nation needs us. All right, fast forward to the 1960s. We have another separation movement. The 1980s, 1992, and here we are today, once again talking about the state of Jefferson. Now, why should you care about this? Why is it important for you to care about the state of Jefferson? Well, I'm going to tell you about my family. Okay? My husband is a U.S. Army veteran. He served for 3 years. He can't get a job in Shasta County, okay, because the unemployment's so high. But the unemployment's dropping, mind you. I'm a little bitter about that. He can't get a job. I have my bachelor's degree. I'm currently in grad school. I haven't worked in Shasta County since I was 17 years old. When I graduated from Chico State with my bachelor's degree with a 3.5 GPA, I couldn't get a job in the United States of America. I went to Russia. I could get a job in Russia, but I couldn't get a job here. Okay?
Something wrong with that.
There is something wrong with that. Now we're going to flash all the way back to the 1880s. I'm going to tell you a little bit about John Bidwell. How many here know about John Bidwell? Did you know that he wrote or helped to write our first California Constitution? He's got a really fancy house down in Chico. I suggest everybody to go see. Well, John Bidwell, he was a farmer, he was a rancher, he was a politician. He had his hand in all the pies, all right? Well, in the 1870s, John Bidwell goes out onto his ranch and he meets up with a fellow named Oliver Hartley Mann. And I go, hey, that's a really unique name. And I was dating my husband at the time, and so I'm like, you know, that's my husband's last name. So I go back to my husband's genealogy, and he is a direct descendant of Oliver Hartley Mann. And I went, that's really cool. That's awesome. So I read further in the Bidwell diaries. I was an employee at John Bidwell's house there at Bidwell Mansion. And I read further in the diaries, and I come across another name. That name is T.W. Polk. I'm like, hey, you know, that's a name I know. That's the name of my ancestors. So I go back to my genealogy, and I find, hey, that's Thomas Wilson Polk, who also knew John Bidwell. This is really cool. So I read a little bit further in the diaries, and on one day in 1882, John Bidwell met with Oliver Hartley Mann and Thomas Wilson Polk together to talk about agriculture in Butte County. But my husband can't get a job in the North State. 150 years later, those two people's direct descendants have trouble getting jobs in the North State because of the economy of the North State. There's something wrong with that. Looking out here, how many of you have children, grandchildren, even great-grandchildren who cannot get a job in the North State because of the economy? How many of them have moved to the city or to another state in order to find gainful employment? How many of you want them to come back so you can see your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren again?
How many of them live with? Wow.
Well, the only way to do that is by separating from California, because California is not going to make life better for us because they don't know how.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's right.
Kayla is 24 years old today. The people who lead, well, spokespeople for Shasta County are 36, 23, and 27. Now, I have a funny thing to tell you, though. At one of the particular meetings we were at, and I'm not really sure what this person was thinking, but she just got up there and said, I have a question. Where's the youth? So we now call Kayla Granny Brown. I want to fast forward about a month and a half later from when I talked to Jim Nielsen. In fact, we'll take it 2 months later. And Doug LaMalfa was at a potluck that we were having in Reading. We were talking to him. Some of you know the congressman. We were sitting and we were eating and we were talking, and eventually we were out in the parking lot talking for about 2 hours. But what I did do is I asked him a simple question. I said, you know, we have this debt in California that has gone up about 5 times in the last year and a half, and it's around $425 billion at this point. So I said, it may be fair to say, or do you think it's fair to say, Congressman, that maybe California is unsustainable in its present course? He said that might be fair to say. I said, one of the spooky things is that I was watching Hannity, which I don't really watch a lot, and my father-in-law moved in with us. He's a World War II vet. We moved him out here from Utah to live with us. He was watching it, and Paul Ryan was on. And Sean Hannity was talking about the $17 trillion that we have in debt in the United States. Well, the interesting thing about that is the fact that he paused, and with a look of concern, he said, you know, that isn't really my concern. My concern is 90 trillion, that's with a T, dollars in unfunded liabilities. And I heard Sean Hannity be silent for 5 seconds, which is rare. And that was a grave look of concern on Paul Ryan's face. Well, I asked Doug LaMalfa if that was true. He said, that's pretty close to being true. Since that time, we found out that California is $890 billion in debt with unfunded liabilities. What happens, folks, if you add that to $425 billion? You get $1.3 trillion? Really? And people ask us the question, do you think the state of Jefferson could sustain? What about the state of California? It's the Titanic. Every time you turn around, you're getting a regulation, you're getting a law passed, you're getting another tax. What about the MV? Add another $1 to that, another $2 to that? Now, someone who's going to clear this up a little bit is a young man, and his name is Robert Smith, and I'd like to introduce him right now.
Good evening. It's good to see everybody here. I'm happy and excited to see this many people. As Pastor Dave puts it, I'm going to try and keep it short and amazing for you and get to the part of the program that you really want to. Now, what the state of Jefferson really is we're about restoring representation in the state of California, because we have none. Where the state of Jefferson has 5 representatives, if you add up our assembly members and our state senators, we have 5 representatives. The county of Los Angeles has 24. Every single one of our guys could stand in line and propose something and make a vote, and if one single county in California doesn't like it, we're already dead in the water. Now, the other problem is that our representation has not changed since 1879. We have 80 representatives and 40 senators. That means each of our representatives are responsible for almost 900,000 people. That is not representation. According to George Washington, 30,000 would be representation, 40,000 representing that many would be tyranny. Now, the other problem that we have is if we actually had representation that we were supposed to have, we would have 58 senators and 1,208 assemblymen. And if you're going to tell me that 1,208 assemblymen could accomplish anything worthwhile, I got some land that I want to sell you. Now, under that model, it would be unsustainable. And what we should have up here in the Jefferson counties, as opposed to our 5 representatives, we should have 18 senators and 68 assemblymen that give us a voice. Now, the problem with all of this goes back to 1965 and a Supreme Court decision called Reynolds versus Sims that actually destroyed the Republican form of government that we are mandated to have by the Constitution. And what that is the federal model of a House of Representatives based on population and a Senate that is equal regardless of acreage or number of people. And the Warren Court destroyed that and made it one man, one vote. That means they district the lines out however they want them, and whoever has the weight in numbers wins. Now, the real cute thing about that is under the logic of the Warren Court, our own federal model and our own Senate would be unconstitutional. So that's what really has to go. That's what the state of Jefferson is about. It's about restoring our voice. It's getting us back to when Northern California was the crown jewel of California. We were the prosperous ones. We were the ones that were making it on the backs of our resources. And we've been regulated out. You know, they tell you that the state of California is the 8th largest economy in the world. Well, California does a lot of cute things with their numbers. Because if you take it by per capita, we're only the 13th state in the whole country in our economy. We have 23.5% of our population living below the poverty level. That is 1.5% away from being a third world nation. Do not tell me that California is getting better. Now, using statistics compiled from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the U.S. Census, the Department of Interior, and the Department of Agriculture, and the California Statistical Abstract, we have compiled a look of the 18 counties. We have lost 72% of our economy since 1994. We are at 28% of what we were 20 years ago. And that is not acceptable. We are $425 billion in debt, over $800 billion with unfunded liability. We have another $18 billion deficit coming on the state budget this year. And Sacramento's running around saying, oh, in another 5 years, we're gonna have a $10 billion surplus. What they're not telling you is that surplus is based on a 26.9% increase in tax revenue. Now, how do you accomplish that when you're driving business out of the state at 6% a year? I don't have 26.9% to give, and neither do my children. My children already owe the state of California $29,000 each, and 2 of them aren't even out of diapers. That is not okay. Now, a lot of the 2 big ones that we run into are, what are the finances going to look like? Well, that's a real simple answer. To begin with, they're going to look like what they do now. Not very good. But the thing is with the state of Jefferson is we actually have an ability to improve the picture. We have an ability to stop begging from the scraps from Sacramento's table and set our own. Now, overall, the picture's not that dire because what California does with their numbers is really cute, okay? Any revenue that the county generates on the back of a state tax or such as road tax or sales tax that they leave in the county, they tell us that's a transfer in. Even though our citizens generated that tax revenue, they tell us that they're giving that money. Any money that comes from the federal government and is dispersed by the state of California, they tell us came from them. We're not as broke as the picture they try to paint. Now the other one. People try and tell me that this is too hard to do. My first relative arrived in Jamestown in the 1630s. I had forefathers that fought in the Revolutionary War out of Virginia and Massachusetts, and fought in the Civil War, again, out of Massachusetts and Virginia. We were called to gun in World War I, and in Korea, and Vietnam. My family has been involved for the fight for this country's soul since the beginning. And now it's my time, and my weapons will be the spoken word and the pen. And I will answer the bell to preserve my children's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What will you do?
So where's the youth? I think we have 11,000 now, Robert, is that correct? 11,000 young people on Facebook on the Jefferson site. 11,000. The first event we ever did in Wairika was put on by a 23-year-old woman, Elizabeth Bradley. Sheriff Lope was on the front end, Mark Baird was on the back end, and in between there was no one older of the 5 speakers than the age of 25. Understand, this has never been done before. Understand, this isn't Kansas anymore. And I'm going to reiterate one thing really quick, because it's probably the most important key, and I'm sure that Mark Baird will bring this to light even more. In fact, I know he will. Reynolds versus Sims. Before 1964, every county had what? A senator. Okay? Representatives were based upon what? The assembly was based upon population. At this point, 11 counties in California have 1 senator and 2 assemblymen since Reynolds versus Sims, since 1 man, 1 vote. That means Los Angeles has 24 assemblymen and 11 senators. Even if they don't agree, our vote doesn't count. People have said that. I always said that. I didn't know why. Reynolds versus Sims. The thing to understand about that is our politicians and our elected officials become ineffectual because they can pass laws in Los Angeles that we can't do anything about. So if you write a letter, or let's say you make a phone call to an assemblyman in Los Angeles that wants to pass a law, does pass a law, gets it on bill out there, gets it passed, you want to call and say, no, don't do this. They don't have to take your phone call. Why? Because you're not a constituent. They don't have to answer your email. Why? Because you're not their constituent. And if you mail something to them, they'll look at your zip code and then mail it back to your assemblyman. That is not equal representation under the Constitution, is it? No. And the sad thing is that a lot of elected officials don't even know about this. We've been enlightening them, though. And we should. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Mark Baird.
Is this working? Everybody hear me? Yeah. I'd like to thank you all for inviting us here to speak. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. And my wife and I used to have a ranch down by Lincoln a long time ago, and oddly enough, we moved to Siskiyou County because we were tired of the state monkeying with the water all the time. So we thought, you know, we'll find us a place that the water rights are tied to the deed, and then, you know, we're just not going to have any more problems ever again with our water. Well, I got some bad news. That didn't help us any. In fact, it probably got worse because the state of California doesn't have any compunction whatsoever about stealing private property from individuals that pay for that property. And Thomas Paine said, I don't have anything but the light of history to guide my feet. I can't see the future. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but experience has to be my guide. You know, you've heard the expression, if you don't know the history, you're going to be condemned to repeat it. That's not exactly true. You're going to repeat history. But by knowing history, you can possibly not make the same mistake again and again and again. And I'd like to talk to you just for a second before I start on the State of Jefferson about your inherent liberty. This is the sense that you were born with. When God created you, you were born with a sense of what was right and wrong. And you were born with a sense of liberty in your heart. You know when things are getting bad. You know when they're getting worse and worse and worse. And if you look at history, when a people is tyrannized and oppressed to the point where they just don't feel there's any other avenue, then something big happens. It's either a revolution, or people get off their rear ends and vote, or they start campaigning, or they come up with a new idea. And what we're saying is the ship called California has been on the same course for 50 years. And for 50 years it hadn't worked. Our unemployment is up, our debt is up, everything is up. All the bad things are up and all the good things are down. So our suggestion today is, should we keep doing the same thing for another 50 and hope it turns out different? Or should we do something historic? And I'd like to just talk to you now about that sense of liberty. We hold these truths to be self-evident. We hold them. We weren't asked about them, we weren't given them. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Self-evident means no one taught you this. It's evident to anyone with eyes and ears to see what's wrong and what's right. And those truths are that all men are created equal. And they're endowed by their Creator. Endowed. That means you inherit these rights. They are passed to you. You didn't ask for them, and you have no ability to give them away. They were passed to you. Whether you use them or not, they're yours. And those rights are unalienable rights. They're immutable. They're not changeable. You can't give them away. You can't sell them. No one else can buy them. No one can use them. They're unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And government is instituted among men for one reason and one reason only, and that is to protect the rights we hold most dear, the unalienable rights. That's the only reason for government to exist, to protect our rights. And when government fails in this duty, it is the obligation of the people to alter or to abolish that form of government and institute a form of government that's more favorable to our safety and our happiness and the things that we want and need for our children.
Right on.
And so, and the last part about inherent liberty is that all of government's just power is derived from the people, all of its just power. Now, as people, we're free to do nothing. And when we do nothing, government takes power that doesn't belong to it. It inserts itself into every aspect of our lives. Regulation increases. Unelected bureaucrats find themselves in a position where they can institute fines and fees. There was a Frenchman, Count Montesquieu, who was sent to the United States after a couple of pretty bad French revolutions because he wanted to know what we did in the United States, because what we were doing worked. We won a country, 3% of the population of the United States took a country from the most powerful military force on earth, and they instituted a form of government that actually worked. And the Count wanted to find out what we did. And here's what he found out. He found out that government works best when you can look your representation in the eye. He said that the county was the township he called it, that was the old-time word for county, was the greatest form of government ever instituted in the world. Because in the county, you can look your representation in the eye. In the county, typically, no one was in charge of regulation that also had the power to place a fee on that regulation. The person that placed the fee wasn't the same person that wrote the regulation. The person that collected the fee was neither one of the first two. Therefore, no one was in a position to sit in judgment of you and your property in the sense that he had the vertical development of the regulation, the fee, the ability to collect the fee, and the ability to jail you if you didn't pay the fee. All of those were different people. And we've lost that form of government through California's laws. So what we're here to do is to ask you a question. We in Siskiyou County and Modoc County and Glenn County and Tehama County shortly, and we've got pretty good things going on in Del Norte County, we're trying to do something. We're trying to accomplish the first Article 4, Section 3 state split in 150 years. Article 4, Section 3 of the United States Constitution says, and I'm paraphrasing because I'm old and I don't have a good memory, but it says, no state shall be formed from the territory contained within a state unless the state legislature agrees and Congress agrees. The founding fathers must have foreseen the need for this or they wouldn't have put it in the Constitution, and I submit to you, these guys were geniuses. So this has been done before. It's been done 4 times in our history before. This is a legal process, it's moral, it's ethical, and there's historical precedent for it. And there is a need for it now because California is ungovernable, and you've heard a couple of people say that. What does that mean? It means that in its present form, in its present size, the way California conducts its business, it doesn't work. And why doesn't it work? Because you are irrelevant in this process. I'm irrelevant. Our vote is irrelevant. The votes of our representatives are irrelevant. I spoke to our state senator and I told him, I said, you know, if you and every state senator and every assemblyman that represents the northern third of the state of California got the flu and stayed home forever, it wouldn't matter, because nothing you want can be accomplished with a majority in the southern 2/3 of California. 99% or 98% of the representation in California begins at a line between San Francisco and Sacramento and goes south from there. We literally have 3% of the representation in the state of California above that line. So you can see that nothing will work for us because our votes are irrelevant. And one example of that, and this isn't a deal breaker, a lot of journalists like to say, oh, they're just mad about the fire tax, but the fire tax is indicative because that's a tax that was largely passed by urban legislators whose constituents don't pay the tax. I mean, in Pico Rivera, they don't have CAL FIRE. They don't have CAL FIRE in Maywood or Bellflower or Huntington Beach or Hermosa Beach or San Francisco County or San Mateo County. They don't have CAL FIRE. They have fire departments. So these guys passed this legislation over the objections of every single legislator in the northern third of California, and the people who vote for them don't pay the tax. What a wonderful thing when you can create revenue for the general fund, and you know for a fact that there's never going to be any political fallout from the people who put you in your chair. So you don't have to worry about it. And as Terry said, have you ever tried to email the assemblyman from Maywood? You can't do it because he'll just bounce it back to you because you don't belong to him. So California is ungovernable. What can we do about that? We can do an Article 4, Section 3 state split. Now, the way we've decided to do that is, and believe me, mistakes have been made. We've never broken a state in half before, so we're kind of learning about the process as we go along. But what we decided to do was we decided to form a declaration and petition to withdraw from the state of California. The reason we decided to go that way was because when we present these declarations to your county's government, it causes no action on their part. It does not cost your county any money. They do not have to direct a county agency to do anything. This doesn't cost the taxpayer one single nickel. And what it is it is simply an affirmation of what you want to see happen, which is to form a government that represents you. And you're telling and by the way, you're not asking their permission to vote for this. You're going to instruct them as to the will of the people, and your recourse is to elect a new individual if they don't follow your will. So with this declaration, and what we want to do is gather enough of these declarations from enough counties to form what we think would be a viable state, and there's no magic number. And by the way, if the people of Sutter County and the people of Yuba County choose not to do this, we simply say, God bless you and thank you very much for your time and good luck with California. But if you do choose to become involved in this and form a committee of your own, we will be there for you. We'll help you. We'll show you what worked and what didn't work. We'll supply paperwork. We have declarations that were written professionally. They're legal documents that contain the legal description of your county. And they're designed to do a couple of different things. Number one, they're designed to show the state of California that we want something. And that's very important. We want representation. And they're also designed to tell the state legislature that if we don't get that something else is going to happen. I'll tell you about that in just one second. So we take the declaration and the petitions, and once we get a pile of those, enough to form a viable state, 10 counties, 12 counties, 14, whatever it happens to be, then we go to the state legislature and we will have those recorded into the state legislative record, and we can then cause the state legislative council to author legislation to separate the X number of counties from the state of California. At that point, we find a Democrat and a Republican assembly person, a Democrat and a Republican state senator, and we have these bills introduced into the legislature, and then the real action begins. The problem with this meeting is twofold. Number one, we want to know whether you want to participate, and we'll get to that towards the end. But number two, if you choose to participate, this has to be the last meeting you go to prior to the formation of our new state, where you go home and do nothing. We have to ask you to do something. We need 10 times 10,000 patriots to stand up and make this work. It is only the overriding, overwhelming will of the people that's going to cause this to happen and cause the state of Jefferson to be born. Our lack of representation is the reason we're doing this. And as Terry pointed out, I actually did the arithmetic one day. I was a sport, I guess. And it's 975,000 people for one state senator. 975,000 people. If each of his constituents called him once a year, 261 days a year, not including holidays and so on, he'd have to answer the phone right at about 4,000 times a day, and he'd be able to spend 8 seconds with each caller. I don't call that representation. These guys represent 1 million people over 30,000 square miles. That's not representation. In New Hampshire, by comparison, Each state representative represents 3,000 people. You know how much a political campaign costs in New Hampshire? About $1,000. The guy files his filing fee, puts gas in his car, and he goes and knocks on every door in his district. And when he does something wrong, people are yelling at him in Walmart the next day. As opposed to here, a political campaign in the state of California costs millions and millions of dollars. Who's paying for those campaigns? It is a magic group called the stakeholders. Y'all ever heard of the stakeholders? Oh, yeah. Those are the people that aren't you. Your voters, taxpayers, property owners, farmers, ranchers, the people that make this economy go. When the stakeholders are invited to a meeting, you're not there. And I've been to a lot of them. I'm a president of a water rights group in Siskiyou County, and I don't know why, but I keep getting invited to these water bond focus groups. I asked the senator that invites me, I said, why do you invite me? I'm the only one in the room that's against this thing. Because you want to build 2 dams in Southern California, but you want to use $500 million to rip out 4 dams in my backyard. Yeah. That's going to break my county. Yeah. So those are, but the stakeholders are represented. The large irrigation districts in Southern California. I was at one of these things where the president of the Bay Delta Stewardship Council said, and I heard this, my job is to ensure reliable water deliveries to Southern California water exporters and to save the environment. So that's what Bay Delta is. The head of Placer Irrigation said that Bay Delta could be written up in any newspaper in the country in the obituary section, and it would be titled The Death of Northern California, because those are 2 massive tunnels that will take the Sacramento River down 25% at a minimum. So that's the rest of the water that you need to grow food for the United States of America. And I'm sorry, I just don't find that representative of the needs or wishes of Northern California. So we have that lack of representation. Now, Terry talked about how much representation Los Angeles has. So let's get back to the issue of what happens. We take the declarations and we go to Sacramento, and we're not kids here. There's a pretty good chance we're going to be ignored, right? So when we get there and Sacramento ignores us, now leg 2 is filled. And this is a 3-legged process. I call it the footstool of Sims versus Reynolds. It has 3 legs. Number 1, we have to have standing. That's something that the declaration and petition to withdraw will give the counties of Yuba and Sutter. It will give them standing in a federal challenge against Reynolds versus Sims. Number 2, we have to have asked for something and been denied. What are we asking for? Representation, that's easy. So now in any federal challenge, there has to be one other thing. There has to be a remedy for the harm. What's the harm? We were ignored. We asked for representation and we were ignored. What's the remedy for that? More representation. So if we succeeded in overturning Reynolds versus Sims, we could then set the stage to return California to a federal model of government, which is 1 state senator for each county. Well, there are 40 rural counties. Heck, we could vote ourselves out of California if we challenge that law successfully. Now, Sims versus Reynolds is kind of interesting. It was 1964 when the decision was made. It was made in order to protect the voting rights of Southern blacks. It was a very noble cause, a lofty ideal. I'm glad that those voting rights were protected. But the problem was unintended consequences. So often when the court involves itself in the legislative process, which by the way they have no business doing, unintended consequences always prevail. Well, the unintended consequence of Reynolds versus Sims was this. The dissenting justice predicted that within 10 years, 6 urban centers would control all politics for the United States of America. And it's exactly what happened. New York, Chicago, Atlanta, Miami, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Sacramento. And there are a couple other, Chicago and a few other cities, but those cities literally contain enough votes to control presidential elections and all other elections. In California, for example, 3 cities are capable of passing any law they want, anytime they want, regardless of who wants it or who doesn't want it, it's going to pass. Whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, it doesn't really matter. Who's at fault doesn't matter. That is simple arithmetic. We have become irrelevant because of Reynolds versus Sims. So if we can challenge Reynolds versus Sims successfully and have that set aside, then perhaps we can move towards that federal model. The problem with Warren was that when he wrote Reynolds versus Sims, he ignored the federal constitution, as Terry said, because each state has 2 senators. Vermont has 2 and Alaska has 2. Wyoming, the least populous state in the country, has 2, and California, the most populous state, has 2. Well, Warren also ignored himself, because later on they had Brown versus Thompson in Wyoming, where the court said, in the case of Niobrara County, which only had 3,000 people, every area should have representation, even sparsely populated areas. Well, I read that and I thought, gosh, that just doesn't make any sense to me, because he just got finished saying that rocks and trees shouldn't have votes, only people have votes. Then they went on in Sawyer versus Tulare Water to say that rocks and trees are allowed to have votes provided it's not done prejudicially and provided it's done for the good of the state or the entity which is represented in the case. So they've contradicted themselves twice. They've ignored the federal constitution, and a lot of lawyers think Reynolds versus Sims was just plain bad law, and it's time to attack that. We think we could get that done pro bono because we don't have any money. By the way, we have no finance, we have no business behind us, no corporation, no group. The Koch brothers aren't paying our bills. We paid for our own motels and our own hamburgers, and we put gas in our own cars, and we accept no money from anybody. And any... The only money we collect in the cans are to pay for this hall and the materials that you're reading, and that's all there is to that. So if we can succeed in overturning Sims versus Reynolds, then we can go back to the federal model of government. Now, why do we want to do that? Why is it we want to do that? Well, how about SB 1? Have you heard of SB 1? Yeah. SB 1 is going to set up regional governance committees that are not elected by you. They're basically appointed by the stakeholders, oddly enough, and they will be in charge of all land use planning decisions in the state of California. And they will be free to say that your property, your ranch, your farm, your business is inefficient and it's therefore a blight. Mm-hmm. If a property is considered a blight, you won't be eligible to get loans because blighted property can't be loaned on. Now, what really constitutes a blight? You're too far from public transportation, or anything else the appointed official says it is. So SB 1, how about the child transgender law? Is there anybody in here that would like their children showering with a child of the opposite sex because Joey thinks he should have been born Jeanette that day? I can't think of one person that thinks that piece of trash is a good law. Second Amendment rights. You have the right to keep and bear arms. You have the unalienable right. Now remember, I disagree with one thing. We don't have constitutional rights. There's no such thing. There are no such thing as constitutional rights. We have unalienable rights that are guaranteed by the Constitution. In other words, the Constitution is not the rule book. The Constitution is the line the government is never to cross. Right on. Well, if that's the line the government is never to cross, why are they crossing it? Because, no, look, if you want to know who's at fault for this, go look in the mirror. We allowed them to cross that line. I have allowed them to cross that line. And I got to say, you've all been busy. You're farming, you're raising kids, you're vaccinating cattle, you're doing all the things people have to do to make it. I have 3 or 4 jobs. My wife has 2 jobs just to make it here. So, I can understand why we've been pretty busy, but it's no excuse. Because you know what the price of liberty is? Eternal vigilance. Eternal vigilance. And we closed our eyes. Now, the Los Angeles Times said that the State of Jefferson will never happen, and if it happens, it'll never make it because all of the important work in California is being done on the coast. All of the important work is being done on the coast. I would like to write a rebuttal to that, and it'd be 1 sentence long. Look at your dinner plate every day. because you didn't grow it, and it did take water to put that tomato on your plate and put that steak on your plate. So now, what is the state of Jefferson going to be, and how is this going to work? Let's say in a perfect world we get passage by both the state legislature and the federal legislature. So what we do is we get this legislation introduced, we get a simple majority. Article 4, Section 3 does not mention the governor. He's not mentioned specifically. He doesn't need to sign this. Article 4, Section 3 does not mention the President of the United States either. But at that point, the fight's going to start, guys, and this is where we need your help. Because we need to help the people in Southern California understand why this is a win-win. And it is a win for them. They have problems in Southern California that we can't understand. Large infrastructure, urban problems, gang problems, water problems, freeway problems, earthquake problems. They have things going on down there that we can't understand and we can't help them with. Look, they're not bad people. They just don't know you. They don't know how you live. They don't know what it takes to make a living here. They don't know how hard you work, and they don't know how hard you struggle. And they don't understand why these regulatory processes make your life so difficult. And as Terry said, California passes 800 laws a year, 800 of them. 99% of those do nothing more than make your life more difficult and more expensive. I mean, let's look at CARB just for a second. I got a 1978 International 1466. It's an old tractor, but it works good, lasts a long time. I paid $4,000 for it. I am a criminal right now because I absolutely refuse to submit, and I will never put a $20,000 exhaust filter on that tractor. A criminal because of the ban on lead hunting ammunition. You know, I raise animals. My wife and I raise animals, so we don't need to hunt for meat. But I mean, we like to do things like everybody else does. But what I'm talking about mainly is ground squirrels. I probably shoot 500 ground squirrels a year in my barnyard, and I absolutely will not go out and find aluminum ammunition to shoot ground squirrels with. So that's another. I'm now a criminal because I won't use non-lead ammunition to shoot ground squirrels. That makes me a criminal and subject to prosecution of some kind or another. These are the types of things I'm talking about. I actually went to Sacramento when they were going to do this lead ban thing, because I have a bunch of lead on our mountain. I thought it was gold. I thought I'd hit it, and it was in with a bunch of quartz, so I took about 20 pounds down to the barnyard, and I was pounding that out, and then I was going to pan it, and it wasn't acting like iron in the quartz, it just didn't look right. So I went and I stuck a magnet to it, and the magnet didn't stick. So my neighbor, buddy, he takes a torch and he hits a lump of it and it melts into lead. And I thought, for gosh sakes, how about that? So I took some of that ore, I went down to a water bond meeting and I took some ore and I was going to go talk to some of these legislators about this lead ban. Well, I went into the office of the guy that wrote that bill and I talked to one of his staffers. And I showed him this ore, and I said, this is lead. It's found right on my ranch. It's natural, and you want to hold it? And he well, I don't want to hold that, he said. And I said, look, I wouldn't grind it up and put it in my mashed potatoes, but it's not toxic if you just stand there and hold it. So he says, that's lead, huh? And I said, yeah, that's lead. And he says, I'll be darned. He says, I thought somebody made that in a factory somewhere. And I said, no, it's on the periodic table of elements. They teach you about that in high school. But But quite frankly, it doesn't make him bad or good. It's just how he really thinks. And it illustrates the fact that he doesn't know you, and he doesn't know me, and he doesn't know what it takes for us to live, and he can't possibly understand why I need to shoot squirrels that are undermining my barn or digging holes under my shop, So once again, now, if we get the State of Jefferson passed, at that point the hard work begins, because committees of reconciliation will be appointed either by Congress or the legislature or by our own state constitutional convention. And that's when the million mundane things that happen that make a state are going to have to happen. The allocation of assets, for example. And the state's attorney general's opinion of that is anything that is an asset of California that lies within the geography of the new state becomes the asset of the new state. So, for example, we have 2 or 3 prisons within the state of Jefferson, but the state of Jefferson only has 3% on average of all the state's prisoners. So that would mean that 97% of those prisoners, we get a check from California to house those prisoners. Yeah! have vast amounts of water that pass through the state of Jefferson. Now, water rights are water rights, and I don't agree with monkeying with those because I don't want anybody monkeying with mine. However, counties that watch a vast amount of water that pass through their county and they derive no benefit from that water, why couldn't that county put a transfer fee on that water of, you know, I mean, if Westland's Water is buying it for 50 bucks an acre foot and selling it for 600 or 700 bucks an acre foot, why shouldn't these counties get 100 bucks an acre foot to watch it go by? I mean, there are a lot of ways that the state of Jefferson can and will fund itself. For example, we don't need a state roads department. Every county has a road department. Well, the road department is Caltrans is fully funded by the federal government. Those monies would then be allocated to counties to do road work. And Caltrans doesn't do the big jobs anyway, they contract them out. Right. We don't think we need state police. Every county sheriff has a sheriff's department fully capable of patrolling the county. And what we would do is reallocate those monies to counties. The county of Sutter and the county of Yuba have MOUs with the federal government. There is no federal law enforcement allowed in these counties unless the sheriff signs an MOU. Well, we don't need federal law enforcement. Every county has a sheriff department. What I would say is that the federal government should contract with Yuba and Sutter County for any federal stuff, chasing poachers or whatever, and then they should pay the sheriff prevailing federal wage, prevailing federal benefit, plus profit and overhead for administration. And that way your sheriff's department would be better manned, better equipped, better staffed, and there would be only one code of conduct. And that code of conduct would be responsible to you, the voter that put that sheriff in his chair. The federal government, everybody says, well, oh, okay, you're your own state, but what about the feds? Well, let's talk about the feds. The 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution says that powers not specifically allowed to the federal government are reserved for the states or for the people. So as a state government with some backbone, we could then support your county in its resource decisions and its governmental decisions and hold the feds at arm's length and say you must obey all laws and rules prior to doing business in Yuba and Sutter County. Otherwise, we won't allow you to do business here at all. We've done that before with NOAA Fisheries and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and quite frankly, we've been to fish meetings, and we ask them, well, what about the Data Quality Assessment Act? And they kind of look and go, what's that? And we say, well, who's your Data Quality Assessment Officer? We don't know what that is. Have you coordinated with county government? Well, we cooperate. And I said, no, there are federal laws that demand that you coordinate with all local governmental entities prior to the planning process of any federal project you want to do. And they kind of look at each other and they say, oh boy, we didn't know about that. Well, we did that with Fish and Wildlife and they went away for 2 years. So the 10th Amendment will work, but you must have a state framework with the backbone to support your county. We envision a state where the county has the lion's share of the power. Government in the United States should work from the bottom up, where your representation has to look you in the eye every single day. So we envision where the county will have the lion's share of the power and the state government will do what states should do. Keep its nose out of county business. They should adjudicate any disputes between counties, administer federal projects, whatever those are, divvy the money up to the counties, talk to other states and talk to foreign governments. That's what states should do. We would say that the state's engineer's office, if you have a big infrastructure project that you need to do in Yuba or Sutter, you call the state engineer office if you need a little bit of help, and there's going to be 5 people in there instead of 5,000. And they'll help you with expertise in engineering, but not put their nose in your business. A school district should be determined by Yuba and Sutter County. You should determine. You should determine what your children learn, not the federal government, and certainly not the state. So those are some of the things, some of the ways we envision the state working. For example, a part-time legislator. We do not need full-time legislature in a small rural state. We're in the process of putting together a state constitution, and I'm about halfway through reading all 50 states' constitutions, because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. What we can do is go to small rural states, pick through their constitutions, get the best of every bit of it, and then we'll have a state constitutional convention with representatives from Yuba, from Sutter, from Sierra, from Plumas, from Modoc, from Siskiyou, and you'll decide what our final product's going to look like, but quite frankly, we'll have a framework so that we at least have a point to begin with. We will have a governor. He's going to make a lot less than Jerry makes. Our lieutenant governor might be the Senate president, so we don't have to hire two guys. These legislators will work 6 weeks every year on legislative matters, and in off years, they'll work on the budget. So 6 weeks every year. Every other year, it's going to be legislative matters. Each guy's going to get one piece of legislation every session. Make it a good one, because you only get one. So really, what we want to do is start over. We want to get back to the basics of government. We don't need 570 state agencies for a small rural state. Heck, we might get away with, I don't know, 350 or 360, or maybe even only 100 of them. Yeah. But we certainly don't need that many. We don't need laws that make your life difficult. We need laws that protect the rights to property, the right of the individual to make a living for himself and his family, and your right to have a moral, historical connection with one another, and provide a place where your children can make a living too. I'd like to read something to you just as I close, and then I'll hand it back off to Terry. This is the preamble to the Constitution of the State of Jefferson. There are times in the history of men when political discourse leads to a separation of two people. We, the people of the state of Jefferson, do not make this separation out of enmity, for in the case of enmity, we hold none toward any man, woman, race, or creed. We make this separation in the name of representation, the last barrier standing between the people and tyranny. Tyranny, however well-intentioned, is nonetheless repugnant. Our safety, our security concern us not where our liberty is at risk. Liberty gives urgent voice to our demand for representation. Representation which must reflect our needs, our history, our culture, and our moral imperative. It is these liberties the people of Jefferson hold most dear. It is our natural, unalienable rights which compel us to establish the state of Jefferson. We, the people, direct our representatives now and forever that the intent and meaning of this Constitution shall always be adjudicated to the protection of the lives, liberty, and property of and for the people of the state of Jefferson. With this state constitution, it is our humble prayer to Almighty God to purchase liberty for our posterity. Hear, hear. Thomas Paine also said, "It is the summer soldier and the sunshine patriot that will shrink from the service of his country. But he who stands with us now deserves the thanks of men and of women." I remember my mother in 8th grade, she made me take a typing class. And I thought, oh God, gee, here it comes. I'm going to be laughed out of school. But I'll tell you, as I was sitting there grinding away, and by the way, I got up to 24 words a minute with 5 mistakes. I remember one phrase that I typed constantly. Now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their country. Now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their country. The time has come for 51. Here we go.
Okay, folks, there's going to be a Yuba City County Board of Supervisors, Yuba County, on Tuesday. Anybody going to go? Anybody going to go on Tuesday? Now, Yuba and Sutter are both here. right? And there are board of supervisors from both counties here, is that correct? And if you're here, could you guys stand up? We'd just like to recognize you. Okay? Now, remain standing. Please remain standing. Please remain. Now, I made a phone call to 3 assembly people who are running yesterday. Are any of those assembly people, did any of those people care enough? Keep standing, you guys. Oh, we have one. Now, we have 2.
Is it back behind?
Oh, it's Mr. Gallagher back there. Okay. Mr. Gallagher and Ryan Shore, too. Okay, good. Now, here's what I want to say as you guys remain standing. I'm going to ask one simple question. How many people here believe that their vote doesn't count? Raise your hand. How many people here believe that Sutter and Yuba should adopt a declaration to separate from the state of California and form the state of Jefferson? Now understand one thing, especially if you are an elected official or you have aspirations. One thing you have to ask yourself is, are you going to be someone who's going to identify with the will of the people, or are you going to be a bureaucrat? Are you going to be part of the solution, or are you going to be part of the problem? Now, I know you guys work hard, people that work for the county and people that work for the city and people that work for the state. I know you guys work hard. But the real deal is this is a microcosm of what's going on across the United States. And the state of Jefferson is the tip of the spear. I know Mark's in touch with Colorado, Maryland, Florida now, Pennsylvania. Because of why? Reynolds versus Sims. We are not the majority. How many times do we read in the newspaper? How many times do we hear that the government's doing all the things we don't want them to? Now, gentlemen, and ladies, you have an opportunity to serve your people. You have an opportunity to ask questions. The real deal is, as I said before, California is 1.3 trillion with a T in debt. Those are not my statistics, those are the statistics from California. And when I ask state senators and congressmen if they've got a better deal, we're in, right? Got a better deal? There is no better deal. This is it. It's time now to get our freedom and our liberty and to form the great state of Jefferson. Now, one thing here I want to say is that basically we really are grassroots. I never stood in front of people before a couple of years ago. And we have some cans that we have here, and we're going to pass these cans around to help defray the cost of all the material and stuff that was made here for you folks, which Pastor Dave will come up and explain in a moment. This was actually a U-Band coffee can. And I kind of liked it like that, and then my wife Sally back there dolled them all up. So we've got about 3 of these, and if some of you guys that are with the church, if you come up here and grab these cans, and we'll pass them around out here. And while we're doing that, I would like to introduce again Dave Bryant.
Okay, that's downright inspiring, y'all. That was awesome. All right, this is my task here. We're going to take a break in a little bit, and then we're going to come back for question and answers. But what my job is to harness the horses. I grew up on a ranch in Idaho, and just having a bunch of horses running back and forth in trail doesn't do a lot of good. So we're trying to harness you and get you involved in making a difference. And everybody here can make a difference. Now, everybody that came through the door, we're hoping for you to take away with you this little packet. If you didn't get this, when we take a break, right at the back table, right in the center, you'll notice up on the walls, we've tried to label everything to make it easy. But there's a table that's called Jefferson State Printed Materials. We've made these little packets for you so that everybody can take out of here 24 contact cards. And the contact cards are just to give people, to let them know what the buzz is about the state of Jefferson. On the one side, we have the double cross emblem. And you see that on there, a lot of the sweatshirts, t-shirts around here. And on the other side is this logo here. And we're wanting to appeal to a lot of different people. Some people are just into that, just in your face, let's get it on and do something radical. Other people are more inclined to some of the principles behind the state of Jefferson. The point is, you got them both on the same card. Whatever blows your hair back, leave that side facing up, okay? Anyway, you can take these and give them to people and get the word out about the state of Jefferson. Also, we have these, a lot of people put a lot of hard work into these, and we want to thank everybody for doing that, but why should we support the state of Jefferson? Bullet points, representation, regulation, restoration. And we want everybody to go out of here with a fistful of these things, as well as this right here. Now, of course, this is for Yuba and Sutter counties, and we have the Yuba County Board of Supervisors, how to get a hold of them. Remember, we believe in representation in government, and so it's our responsibilities to let them know how we feel about the state of Jefferson. So contact information, one side for Yuba County, the other side for Sutter County. Everybody needs to pick up a fistful of these, and again, it's on the table in the middle there. In addition to that, if you haven't yet signed the statement that we're in support of the state of Jefferson, we want everybody to sign up by county, Yuba County or Sutter County, and it just simply says this: state of California is ungovernable in its present size. The interests of the northern counties are ill-represented. We, the undersigned, support a resolution by either Yuba or Sutter County Board of Supervisors to withdraw from the state of California. It's time to start over and align with the newly formed sovereign state of Jefferson. We want everybody here to please sign that. Now, those sign-up sheets, again, are at the table back there, and all this whole section over here to your right, we've got a lot of clipboards out there, so you can very easily sign up for that. We want everybody to do that. Now, you can also get all of the merchandise over here, and these things are awesome. You become a walking billboard. They're awesome. So go over here, you can pick out, there's just a lot of different variety, the double X logo or the one that I'm wearing. Also yard sign. Pick them up, put them in your yard, and get the news out. Bumper stickers, there's different bumper stickers over there, but pick that up. Everybody can become an enthusiastic supporter. So we want you to get the printed materials. We want you to sign up with the declaration statement. We want you to pick up the merchandise. And then there's a couple of other things I want you to know about before we break here. There is a table right back here on this side underneath the big banner. It says high traffic recruitment table. What we're wanting is for some of you that will go out and we'll provide everything. We'll provide one of these tables with that beautiful banner on it. We'll provide the little, all of these kind of literature holders and the cards and the sign-up sheets and everything. All you have to do is we'll find a high-traffic area, like maybe a Sam's Club parking lot, and you'll say, okay, I'll sign up and take a stint on a Saturday morning and sign up there and say, hey, have you heard about the state of Jefferson? Hand out the cards, get signatures. It's something that lots of you can do, and it's something that is really important to get the word out and get people on board. So that's the high-traffic recruitment table. Another thing that we have is right over on this side, small business partnerships. This is huge. A lot of you are small business owners. Lots of small business owners are having to move out of California, and we all think it's a shame. But listen, these people are really easy to get on board. I tried this. I went up to, in fact, they might be here, but I went up to the American Heritage Barbershop. Walked in with one of those shirts on and a hat, Second Amendment hat, which everybody ought to wear. But anyway, Walked in there and I said, hey, you heard about Jefferson? They said, we heard there was a meeting. We didn't know about it. We missed out. Where can we get that stuff? I told them about it. It just took a couple of minutes. There were 3 guys there. They all bought a hat. They all bought a shirt. They all bought a bumper sticker. And they let me set up a literature rack there. They let me set up one of these holders for cards to let people know about the state of Jefferson. And they also let me leave a clipboard so that they could recruit. When people come into their barber shop, they can say, hey, have you heard about the state of Jefferson? Sign up, whether they're from Yuba County, Sutter County, they're signing up there. Now, that is a huge asset to get some small business owners that are recruiting for us, and we're in partnership with them. It's easy to do. Wouldn't it be great if there were about 30 small businesses in Yuba County, about 30 small businesses in Sutter County that all had these things up in the window, and everybody that came through the door, they were telling about the state of Jefferson and getting their signature. That would be an awesome thing. You can help in that. So sign up to be a part of those. And this is one other thing that I'd like to ask you to do. Back at this small business partnership table, this is what I'd like to do. I'd like to be able to go into a small business, like I did at American Heritage, and just give them all this stuff. Just say, hey, if you will help us collect signatures and get the word out, we'll give you this, and we'll give you all of this stuff. You won't have to pay a cent. We'll make it all happen. It costs about 25 bucks to get a business set up like that, with a whole lot of the trifold brochures, a whole lot of the business cards, and with a window sign and all. So some of you, I think, probably are into this enough to help us to sponsor a small business. And you can do that back at that table. A check of $25. And that pays for everything necessary to go into a small business on either side of the river and get them set up. All right, now, in addition to all of that kind of stuff, remember, everybody can become a walking billboard, put the bumper sticker on your car, hand out the printed matter. Everybody needs to get their name on these signature sheets to support the Jefferson Declaration movement. In addition to that, 2 great ideas. Help us with the high traffic recruitment tables to get signatures. Help us with the small business partnerships. Now, you'll find a lot of other stuff out and around. We're going to take a little break and let you get out there and buy some stuff and sign up for some stuff. One other thing I want to mention is Tim Kurtz is over at this table. Stand up, Tim. Give us a wave. That's Tim Kurtz. And over there, if you have some ideas, some strategies, if you want to talk to him about that, go see Tim, how we can do a better job in Yuba and Sutter counties and getting the word out. And you might have some great ideas. These are just some that we thought of. And also over there, I believe in prayer. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But if you want to be a part of a prayer team to pray for our state, and listen, man, you don't have to have great faith to know that California needs all the prayer it can get. It's last down, long yardage. And listen, this isn't about whether you're right wing or left wing. Mainly it's about not being the chicken itself. I don't care which wing you are, but come on, let's hair up a little bit. Stand up for what's right. Do the right thing for a change. All right. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Now, the other thing is, as we're taking this break, we're going to have a slideshow up here, and it's downright inspiring. I got to say that. It's about the state of Jefferson. It's about our forefathers, and so you can take a look up there and get some inspiration from history. All right? We're going to take a break. We'll give you a holler here in about 20 minutes, and then that'll be time to line up for question and answers, and we'll give you the ropes as we go along on that. All right? So take a break. Make sure you get signed up. Buy lots and lots of stuff. And sign up at those tables for the Small Business Partnership, the high traffic.
Different electric companies throughout the North State.
Well, which company do you work for?
PG&E.
Oh, well, okay. That's pretty easy, really, because PG&E is a multi-state entity, and Pacific Power is a multi-state entity, and quite frankly, those things probably wouldn't change. What may, however, change is that any Public Utilities Commission, which, by the way, is supposed to be the advocate for the ratepayer, in the state of Jefferson, they actually represent the ratepayer. So, and also in the state of Jefferson, and this is very important, and this addresses exactly the type of business that PG&E is in. In the state of California, the governor has ruled that hydroelectric power is a non-renewable resource. Now, hydroelectric power is, as you know, the cleanest, greenest, cheapest power on the planet. For example, in Siskiyou County, when they removed the Klamath dams because of the cost of hydroelectric power, alfalfa farming will immediately become unprofitable because electricity will be too expensive. So in the state of Jefferson, hydroelectric power will be a renewable resource, and it will be favorably looked upon. And by gosh, if we put a man on the moon in 1969 with a slide rule, certainly we can teach a fish to climb a ladder.
Are we going to allow unions in?
Well, you know, quite frankly, I favor a right to work state. However, that's a constitutional convention issue, not up to me to decide. But personally, I favor right to work. So, thank you.
Hi, I was wondering, my father is a truck driver
Yes.
in California, and he was wanting for me to ask you, where's the money going to come from to keep up the highways? Because now, isn't it being paid out of Sacramento?
No, Caltrans is fully funded by the federal government. So what we plan to do is we plan to take the federal government's contribution, which constitutes Caltrans, and instead disperse that money to the counties. Every county has a road department that's fully capable of maintaining its roads. And without the waste of Caltrans bureaucracy, that money could put to much more effective use. And what we propose is a state engineer's office where if a county needs engineering expertise that it doesn't possess, if a county, for example, Del Norte has last chance grade, it's where the highway is constantly falling in the ocean. If they need technical expertise that's above and beyond the county's ability to supply that, the state engineer's office, which might have 5 people in it instead of 5,000 or 15,000, would be tasked with going wherever it needs to go in the world to find that expertise to help the county of Yuba or Sutter conduct those infrastructure projects. And Caltrans doesn't do the big stuff themselves anyway. They contract it out to Kiewit Pacific. So these things are nothing that the county can't do themselves, provided they have the money to do them. And what we will do is eliminate state overhead and state bureaucracy so that your county has the money to do those things. About 30% of this county's budget goes to public works and public protection. And without Caltrans, monies could be devoted to that. And remember, our economics from day one will be about the size of the state of New Mexico with about 1 million people population. So what we would do then is we'd be in a position, because we'd have a favorable regulatory climate and a favorable business climate, to attract businesses, which attract jobs, which raise tax revenue because people are getting a paycheck and they're spending that money. That raises property value, which raises property tax revenue, and our state will flourish within 5 years. We'll have more jobs than people that do them.
I'd like to add to that as well, too. You brought up trucking. Until very recently, I was actually a dispatcher for RLT, which is a fairly good-sized trucking company. And because of CARB, we've been hit pretty hard. And to let the truckers know, in the state of Jefferson, you won't be dealing with CARB. You won't be paying the highest fuel road taxes that you're paying now. And instead of your road taxes that you're actually paying, they would go to the roads instead of building condominiums in San Francisco.
That's right.
What type of a time frame are you anticipating this whole process to take?
Oh, I'm really glad you asked that question. We, in a perfect world, if everything went absolutely correctly, this could be done in a year. It's not a perfect world, and we're not kids here. So we have a 2 to 5 year timeline, and this is a marathon, not a sprint. And because we all are at fault for the loss of our liberties, I promise that I will be in this until there is no breath left in my body to fix that. The
website, I imagine, is what where we could go to get information about meetings and other processes going on? We found out about it because my husband reads the newspaper, but I don't.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have known about this meeting at all.
JeffersonDeclaration.net is the website. Now, once again, we don't like to ask everyone's forgiveness. None of us has ever broken a state in half before, so this is what we have tried to do with the website. It's pretty darn good, and it's going to get better. And the more expertise we get and contribution we get from the people of Yuba and Sutter, if anybody knows web design, has any thoughts, processes, we need inclusion. We need ideas, we need thoughts, we need input, we need help. We need to do this together because, as Ben Franklin said, either we hang together or we will most certainly hang separately. Thank you.
Also, there are the Facebook pages. There's Jefferson State News. Each county has its own individual Facebook page. They're very active.
Robert, tell them about the radio show too.
Oh, and 1460 KCNR.
Which live streams.
Which live streams. Kayla and I do a show, an hour every week, Saturday from 8 to 9. It's called Jefferson State of Mind. You're welcome to call in. You can listen to it live on the internet, and we're talking all things Jefferson on there every Saturday morning.
But you guys will also give the news of upcoming meetings and upcoming events and upcoming votes, right?
On Jefferson State of Mind, we try to focus on everything that's local here in the North State. It is a call-in show, so we do appreciate people calling in and asking questions. We try to answer everything. We do focus on the town halls that are coming up. We focus on little meetings that are happening. We try to talk about where the next meetings are going to be in the different counties. And we also do try to touch on other things that are going on in California and how that affects the people of the state of Jefferson, because quite frankly, a lot of us don't really know how certain things that pass in Southern California will eventually trickle right on up to us and how it will actually hurt our economy very badly.
Along with the social media, the Facebook you just said, I don't see it on any of the, your banners or anything. I just think that's very important. I'm a small business owner. And we have like over 500 people on there already, and you can, just for a small $20 at a time, 4,000 people can get hits on a certain picture. Well, I'm just saying, depends. It's really cheap to do. I don't know if you know how to do that yet. And but you can reach so many people. Like this event tonight, if you took pictures and put on there, and for $20, $25, it can hit 5,000, 6,000 people. So
I'll let Robert and Kayla do that because I have to ask an 8th grader how to turn my phone on.
The second thing is, are you guys going to have a big meeting or something before the next elections?
Yeah, we'll probably have several before the next election. So yes, absolutely. So we have votes coming up in June. Tehama County will vote on the declaration, and we are going to have a couple of town halls in Tehama County. We want to have a big town hall at Chico State because we want to engage the youth and we want to make young people understand how if we don't change the dynamic in this state will not include them going forward. So, yeah.
I'm just wondering, because we're part of California right now before we break off, how do we do that without having to take a portion of California's debt with us?
Well, okay, that's a really good question, and here's the answer to that. We need to be honorable people. We need to live in a state that has integrity and has the honor to discharge its debts as well as its obligations. When the committees of reconciliation meet, we will be apportioned a certain amount of California's assets. Those will be the assets, according to the state's Attorney General, that lie within the geography of the state of Jefferson. We will also be apportioned a part of California's debt. That's just the way it works. Now look, our votes haven't counted, but we weren't asleep when the money was spent. So we're going to be responsible for a portion of that, but this is how it's going to work. Once again, according to the state's Attorney General, if you follow the logic of Reynolds versus Sims, one man, one vote, we are entitled to 3% of the debt because we only have 3% of the people. Now, if you follow the logic of the state's Attorney General and the governor once again, who only admits to $142 billion in debt, we would get 3% of that, not the 1.1 trillion that we know exists. So the question is not whether the state of Jefferson can make it. The question is, can we get away from California while we can still afford to? We could handle 3% of 140 billion. We'll figure it out. 3% of 3 trillion, 4 trillion, 5 trillion in 20 years, we wouldn't be able to sustain that. We need to do this now while we can afford our 3% of the debt, and we'll figure it out. And look, if I lived in a free state, I could deal with a couple of potholes.
Right.
On that note, on a historical note, the last state that separated was West Virginia from Virginia, and in a Supreme Court case in 1905, the Supreme Court actually ruled that West Virginia had to take a portion of Virginia's debt by populous basis, but it was not to be interest-bearing, even though this was about 60 years after they had split, and that all improvements that had been made in the state of West Virginia by Virginia did not have to be paid. That include all public lands, simply because those were considered improvements on the lives of the then Virginia citizens. So if we take that precedence, we actually would only walk away with the debt that is proportioned to the population basis.
Also, there's another aspect of that we hadn't had a chance to talk about. According to the Equal Footing Act and the Enabling Act, there is real precedent here, and Utah is making a good run at this, to try to recapture some federal lands or all federal lands. And we can't recapture as a state national parks. Those are lands held in trust. But BLM land is public land. The last time that occurred, Alaska took 3.9 million acres off the feds, and they put that property back into beneficial use for the state of Alaska. So we could either, as a state of Jefferson, lease that land out for grazing or farming or whatever, or we could sell it outright and put it back on the property tax rolls, which would dramatically change our financial picture. And also the feds are talking about, because they won't let us log, we can, as a state framework, support your county, and we can go back to healthy stands timber management by enacting a natural resource state of emergency, and your county board of supervisors directs the county sheriff to entertain requests for proposal for responsible, small diameter, healthy stands timber management, and we could recover 75% of the 83% of timber revenues from the federal government that we've lost.
Awesome.
Yeah!
Hi there, thank you guys a lot for what you're doing. I had a question about those of us who are paying into California retirement accounts,
Yes.
like CalSTRS and things
Yes.
like that.
Okay, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked that. Once again, we need to be honorable people and we need to be fair people. And if we can't do that, I don't want to live in Jefferson. So, employees of the state of California who are vested, they have a contract with the state and they've worked all their lives and they expect certain things to happen based on how they began their careers, deserve their money. And that's just the way it is. And in order to be honorable, we need to pay that money. Now, new employees, we must form a retirement structure that will protect the employee and not break the taxpayer's back. And the way to do that is to move from a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan. No government can guarantee 8% forever and ever and ever. Employees that are vested keep their check. That's the fair thing to do, and it's the right thing to do. It's going to be tough, but we're going to have to do it, or we would be just as bad as California. But new employees, if we give a portion of money, whatever each county determines, whatever the state determines together, once again, that's for the Constitutional Convention, if we place a defined contribution into that employee's pension fund every year, somewhat like a 401k, that's something that a county could determine in advance. It could budgetize. The state can prioritize and budgetize those monies, and we would not have any unfunded liabilities because we'd know in advance what it was going to cost us to hire an employee, and if we couldn't afford it, we wouldn't hire the employee. And that's a way to defend the employees that are vested now. And by the way, if you're already getting CalPERS, you'd still get the money. It's the same, you know, if you move to Idaho, you still get your CalPERS. Right. If we move the boundary line, you're still going to get your CalPERS. You're still going to get your Social Security. You're still going to get your Medicare. Those are federal projects. So that's one way we could defend the employee and not break the taxpayer's back at the same time. Yes, sir.
I'm concerned about how the judicial system would be incorporated. Right now we know that the Supreme Court is from a federal basis as overruling many of the individual state laws. And how would we break free from those things and stop the ever-encroaching type of things like changing the nomenclatures of certain things to add more kind of either unjust taxes or unfair ways of, like you say, stealing land or whatever. All of the agencies of the federal government are coming against the people by unfair laws.
Well, here once again, that's a good question again. Here's where the 10th Amendment comes into play. The 10th Amendment is very clear, and the 10th Amendment has never been changed, it's never been set aside, and it's not legal for the federal government not to obey the Constitution from which our laws are founded. So, according to the 10th Amendment, powers not specifically given to the federal government in the Constitution are reserved to the states or to the people. But here's our problem with California. California allows the feds to break the rules anytime they want. They don't insist on any of that. And so what we would have is a state constitutional framework that bars and prohibits the legislature from ever doing that. And another thing, the Constitution of the state of California has been amended 521 times in 163 years. What we propose is by constitutional convention, once again, this is going to be all of you helping to decide this, we propose a set of rules that will not only prohibit that, but those rules will be extremely difficult to change, if not impossible, so that that protection will be in place 100 generations from now.
I understand that. That's law, but it seems like our federal government is trying to override any of those things. And what is going to happen if the federal government don't care about what we pass as a law and try to impose it no matter what?
Well, here's the deal. If the federal government decides that they don't like the state laws and the state constitution, well, I guess they're just going to have to go somewhere else, because we won't allow them to intrude upon the state's affairs, and we can use the 10th Amendment to keep them away. Now, here's the problem. The will of the people must be heard here. You know, we can't stay in our houses and eat ice cream and watch TV and hope all this is going to go away. We need 10 times 10,000 patriots to stand for the Constitution of the United States. Or this is, you know, the Constitution was meant for a moral people. Jefferson told that lady in the street after the convention, I've built you a republic, but let's see if you can keep it. That's up to you, and it's up to me, and it's up to everyone in this room to stop that kind of intrusion, and we can do it. Yes, sir.
Yes. When the State of Jefferson takes off and I become a resident in the State of Jefferson, my work takes me one day in the Bay Area, the next day I'm up in Chico. What happens to the taxes on my check? Am I going to be paying taxes in 2 separate states?
Well, you know, my work takes me all over the world, and I still pay taxes here, and I don't like that. So what we need is a regulatory framework and a tax structure that benefits businesses and people in this state. I hope we can come to a point where there won't be any state income tax, and that way your check wouldn't be affected no matter where you made the money.
It only works that way on 2 states if where your check is being cut from comes from 2 states. If your check is cut from the state of California, then you're going to get California taxes. If it's cut from a company here in the state of Jefferson, you would pay the state of Jefferson taxes. It doesn't matter where you work, it's where your income is derived from.
Okay. Thank you.
And they'll move. Move the state of Jefferson. Your company will move. Heard anything about yes, they will.
I actually have 2 questions. The first one is, I'm a teacher here in Yuba City, and I have a state of California credential. I'm wondering what would happen to other people, myself and other people, when it comes to our state credentials or our state licenses that we
Well, I think
possess.
that fortunately that one's pretty easy, because you know there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. In other words, you've gone through the work and the effort and the incredible amount of study to gain certification. I can't imagine that when we form a new state that certification wouldn't be automatically accepted, and I can't imagine any reason why that wouldn't be the case. And I know I work for an airline too. That's kind of my day job sometimes. And when we get a new airplane, we don't go out and write brand new books. We steal them from another airline and change the names and throw out the stuff we don't like and put in the stuff we do. So when I change airplanes, I don't have to get a new pilot's license. So I think it'd be okay.
And specifically to that question, and I'm a teacher myself, the California teaching credential is one of the most strict teaching credentials in the nation. You can take that teaching credential even to Massachusetts. Massachusetts is the only state that has the same standards that we do. If you were to get your teaching credential like Nevada and you moved to California, you'd have to re-up in California. But you're good basically everywhere. So
I would, however, like to see Common Core go away.
yeah.
And then the other question is, I am an outdoor enthusiast. I love taking my son to our state parks, and I'm just wondering, how would that work with the new State of Jefferson? Would we be able to save our state parks and save all of the history that Northern California has?
Well, one of the great things about our state parks in the area that we live is we live in one of the most beautiful places in the country.
Right.
And a lot of our state parks are closed now. You go and you can't get into them because they're closed. But why would the State of Jefferson ever be foolish enough to deny volunteers that could keep those parks clean and open and serviceable to the people?
Come on, Robert.
I wanted to say one thing just to clear something up, because a gentleman asked me a very good question. I know you guys are reading in the press that, that there are Oregon counties and California counties. Well, obviously, an Oregon county can't separate from the state of California, can they? No. They've got to separate from the state of Oregon. So the answer to that question is Oregon is not doing this with us. Oregon really can't do this with us. Now, down the road, if they form something and they want to join us after we're a state, that's a whole different issue.
Right.
But they have to separate from their own state. And I know the press has just been killing us with this. It's every other day we see something in the press about Oregon counties and California counties. It just isn't the case. So I just want to put that one to rest.
On the lady's question, having been an employee at Bidwell Mansion, I was an employee there from about 2009, 2011. And I've got to tell you how ludicrous the state of California is, all right? It'll just be really quick. Bidwell Mansion takes about $100,000 to run every single year. It's another about $50,000 of employees' salaries, okay? When you all remember the budget cuts, it said that they were going to close all the state parks and they were going to close Bidwell Mansion. Well, the ludicrous part of this is Chico wanted to buy Bidwell Mansion from the state to run it themselves. The state said, you can't do that. Secondly, they wanted to take all of the historical items out of the house, put them into refrigerated containers that would keep the humidity at the level that it needed to be in order to keep all the artifacts proper. That would have cost about $150,000 a year, but they would have cut all of our employees out, and we wouldn't have been able to allow any volunteers. It would cost the same amount of money. So that's how California runs things. When they threaten the state parks and the national parks here in California, they do it because they know that you care, and they're going to use it as an issue. They're going to use it as an issue to drive you guys apart. Don't get divided by that, because the truth is they're just using it to dangle a carrot in front of you to get them what they want to do, okay? You unify yourselves under the things that you can agree on, and one thing you can agree on is that your state parks can run, your historical parks can run, and the state doesn't need to touch it. So that's just my piece on that.
Yes, sir. I like that are supposed to serve them. So what we have a framework in place, but nobody obeys it. In the state of Jefferson, under a constitutional article, government malfeasance will be a crime. So if these crimes are committed any other questions at all? Thank you so very much. I'm humbled and honored that you've allowed us to come here and speak, and we certainly hope that we can welcome the great counties of Yuba and Sutter into the new free state, the first state split in 150 years. The time has come for 51.
We want to thank you all for coming out.